Welcome back, guys. Today we are making this adorable sling style bag. As you can see on the front, it's got two separate side zipper pockets. They do not run through to the center of the bag. They are their own separate pockets, which is perfect for little items like your sunglasses or lip gloss. Even a phone fits nicely into the side pocket. But the best part to me is that the main axis goes against your back for an anti-theft style bag. Inside it is also finished for the most part, but you will have a little bit of binding on this final seam that is tucked up underneath this back panel, so I wouldn't let that scare you. It's very straightforward and it is not something that you see very easily inside the bag. And if you stick around, I have a little bonus at the end of the video that I've included in the pattern. I think you're gonna really like it. Once you've decided on the material you're gonna use, it actually comes together pretty quickly. I think the hardest part, honestly, is cutting everything out and getting all of the proper interfacings fused and ready to go. So let's kind of go over the pieces real quick before we start our sewing. We're gonna have a shoulder strap, which we cut to 50 inches, but that's per your preference. If you want a longer strap, cut accordingly. We have a grab handle here, and then we have a couple of the D-ring tabs to connect your shoulder strap to. You technically only need one if this is for you and you already have a preferred wear style, but if you're selling and whatnot, you don't know if someone's gonna wanna wear it on their right shoulder or the left shoulder, I would encourage you to do the two D-rings. We have our zippers. These are the side zipper pockets ready to go, and then this is the main access zipper. I've kept my pattern piece for the zipper tabs clipped because I'm going to cut them all as one. As you can see, it is tapered, so it's kind of obnoxious, but I find just stacking them all together and cutting them as one, it goes pretty quickly. This is the D-ring tab, a standard rectangle for the back entryway. My liners are waterproof canvas, so for the binding, at the very last step, I just cut a 1-inch strip by the length of the fabric for my binding because this does not fray. But otherwise, you can use fold over elastic, or you could use actual double fold bias tape 1/2 inch. So I've cut one of each for the back panel, and then we've got one of each liner and exterior for the main panel. We've got two topper pieces, and honestly this can be whatever you want. If you want to do it in your main fabric, your lining fabric, or an accent. I'm using a faux leather for this. And then the key is throughout the whole process, I like to keep my pieces oriented just like this in front of me so I can keep my right pocket separated from my left pocket, make sure the zipper pulls end up at the top for each. And if you're using directional fabric, this will be especially important to be mindful of because you don't want to end up with two right pockets or your print is upside down. So you have 2 exterior pocket pieces and then 8 lining pieces. So I cut my zipper pocket liners are 2 different colors, and then this is actually the liner to the interior of the bag. And I've kind of oriented them in the way that I will be using them. So these will be wrong sides together, and then the lining of the pocket is right sides together, and then these are wrong sides together. So after we've got all of our pieces cut and fused, this is a canvas that I'm using, so I did add the fusible fleece to the back and I did take it to the edges. But if it's just a lightweight quilt cotton, you would probably want to do woven interfacing first and then the fusible fleece. And then before we start the sewing, we have to add center notches to the rounded edge so you can fold your pieces in half and add that to both sides there. We're adding center notches to each side as well as the top and the bottom here. And then I've also added center notches to my topper. So you have the 2 14-inch zippers. If you're using a standard pre-made zipper, you're gonna wanna go ahead and cut off the stops on either end so you have exactly 14 inches of tape. Today I'll be using zipper by the yard. So I'm just gonna pass my lighter over the edge just to stop these edges from fraying really quick. And then once I thread my pulls on, I like to push them all the way to the top so that I can keep track of the top part of the zipper versus the bottom part of the zipper, because again, on the side pockets, they're gonna be up at the top. So like I said, I kept my pattern piece clipped here, and then I'm just gonna kind of cut them all as one, just to make things easy. And it does seem kind of obnoxious that it's tapered, but it is really necessary. Otherwise you will have a big gaping hole on the side and rippling. So don't try and skip this part. All right. So I have 4 exterior pieces to go on each end here. And then I've got the 4 liners that will be sandwiching those on each end. And then the smaller zipper, they're just straight rectangles. So we have 2 for the top and then a liner. All right, so add our tabs. We're gonna make a zipper sandwich. So we're gonna take one of the exterior pieces, line it up along that top edge, and then take the liner right sides together here to create this zipper sandwich. And we're gonna sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance and press them open, just like that. We're gonna do that on all of these edges, and I do all my zippers at the same time. If it helps you stay accurate and you wanna draw your 1/2 inch seam allowance, or you'll notice that the taper starts at the 1/2 inch, you can use that as your guide as well. But when we're done with our tabs, the finished zipper needs to be 18 inches, and that is important. And just make sure that you add the correct tabs to the correct zipper, because they're slightly different sizes, but almost close enough that you, if you're not paying attention, you could easily mess that up. All right, so now that they're all prepped and ready to go, we're gonna go to the sewing machine and sew each end a 1/2 inch seam allowance, press open, and top stitch. Okay, so we've got our tabs added. So now I'm just gonna quickly make sure it is exactly 18 inches for these side pockets, because that is important. This one is actually a little bit longer than it needs to be, so that one's fine. Next thing you know, we gotta do is find their center markings and mark those. So you can mark them with a pin if you want, or a marking pen, but I just tend to cut little snips here. Center marks and landmarks are going to be real important throughout this whole bag, because that's basically what we're lining up every step of the way, is a center mark. So make sure you got all your stuff marked appropriately. All right, zippers are prepped and ready for the next step. Oh, that's pretty. What did I do there? Just gonna set these aside for now, and then we're gonna grab our shoulder strap and our 2 topper pieces. So we want to mark 1 inch from one of the edges so that it can be tucked into our topper for more reinforcement on that strap. So I just mark 1 inch in, and then I'm gonna line up that 1 inch marking centered on this one of the toppers, right side. So right side's facing. So if you've got a print on your webbing, make sure it's facing down. And then we're gonna sandwich it. So you can base this in place to hold it steady so it doesn't shift. And then you're gonna sandwich this in place, and we're gonna sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance along the 3 sides. Leave the bottom open for turning. Next thing, we're gonna trim down this seam allowance, but we don't wanna cut the webbing. So I'll just trim it down to about 1/4 inch. Come in around the corner here. All right, and then we're just going to turn this right side out. Need to get a pointy tool to push out those corners. Do that, otherwise we're going to go ahead and just hold these seams with a clip, and we're going to top stitch. I like to do 1 row of stitching close to the edge, about 1/8 inch, and then come back around 1/4 inch away from that and do a second row. And this is just an added security. So we've basted in the strap here, and then we've got 2 rows of stitching. It just reinforces that top strap handle. Just go along the bottom for my, so I can do my second row of stitching here. One row of stitching is perfectly fine if you don't want to do this. I just happen to kind of like the look of it and that added security of the extra row of stitching. Alright, and then we're just going to trim off these little wings along the bottom. Next, we've got to grab our grab handle and baste that in place. Now I'm going to grab my carrying handle, my grab handle here, and we're going to need to mark in 1 inch from each side. Place a mark on both sides here. And then we're going to loop our handle so it's not flipped, but loop it, and then put the long edge along that marking on each side here and baste in place. So I'm going to just take it off camera and baste that in and set it aside, and we're going to move on to the back main panel. Now we want to grab our back panels, and we haven't cut it yet because I want to make sure to emphasize this. So we're going to take the exterior and cut from the right bottom corner to the top left corner on a diagonal, corner to corner, but we have to mirror that cut on our lining piece. So then we're going to do the left bottom corner to the top right corner, so you'll have mirror cuts. I've got my mirrored cuts now. So we do have to find the center along this diagonal cut. So I lay it corner to corner, and I will snip my little center markings, and I have to do that on all of these pieces here, because we're going to line up the center of these diagonal cuts with the center of our zipper. And like I said, you'll have just a little bit of an overhang that we're going to trim down, so that's why we're just going to focus on these center cuts. So in the pattern, I do call for 1/8 inch double-sided tape. I love this stuff because for the most part, when we're installing the zipper, it is a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but every other edge that we're sewing is a 1/2 inch. So by using the 1/8 inch to secure our zipper, it allows us to keep our needle out of the tape. So I would highly recommend using the tape for the zipper installs on the side pockets and also on this main back panel. But if you're worried about it, you can certainly just use clips. So I want the top of my bag to open from top to bottom, so the pull needs to be at the top. So I'm going to orient myself that way, but then I open the zipper because it's easier to lay it down, and I'm going to add some double-sided tape. If you don't want to use the tape and you just want to do clips, you're going to just create your zipper sandwich, and we want them to be identical. So this cut lays perfectly on top of this cut. So if you didn't mirror your cuts and you're trying to get it lined up all like with the liner, you're going to get something like this. It's going to be very confusing. So make sure that that's a mirror cut, and we're going to sandwich it together, clip it in place, and then sew it, open up your seam, and top stitch. So for zipper installs, we're doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and the edge of my foot to my needle is a 1/4 inch. So I just use that as my guide as I'm sewing, keeping the edge of my foot along the edge of my fabric. So I can feel my zipper pull under here, so I stop with the needle down so that I can move it out of the way, and then I keep going. then you can either take it to your iron and give this a good press, or I'm just gonna finger press it right now. And then this is the waterproof canvas, so I've gotta really push hard with my fingers. Now when I go to top stitch, then I will grab these and kind of hold the corners together and then pull them as one as I'm top stitching. And then as I'm top stitching, I'm staying an 1/8 inch from this folded edge because that will help me keep out of my double-sided tape. Because if you put it along the edge of it is over here. Get close to that fold so you don't get your needle all gunked up. First side is done. Now we're going to grab the other side and repeat the process with the zipper sandwich. Now we're just going to repeat the same process with the other side of the exterior. Take our center marking and line it up on the center of the zipper again. And then same thing with this piece. Center marking, center of the zipper, and clip in place. So you should always have these lining up perfectly. That looks confusing, but whatever you're sandwiching should always line up. So clip it in place and we'll go ahead and sew it. Now, because we don't want to have to put this on the back with corners, we're just gonna gently round these excess. And you're just gonna follow the straight edge and round it. It's not complicated. You just want a nice rounded edge. So don't overthink this part as far as needing the perfect rounded corner. You just don't want corners when you're installing it. That's the hard part. So once I've done that, then I will just fold them in half and use that cut side as a guide for the other edge. So the main goal is just so you don't have corners. Just keep that in mind and don't overthink it. And then lastly, we're gonna go ahead and fold it in half and mark our centers here. You are welcome to go around the edge to baste the layers as one. I don't usually do that, but if it makes things easier for you, do that now. Okay, before we're done with the back panel, go ahead and grab your two little cuts of 1-inch webbing and your D-rings. If you're only doing one, determine the side that you want it on. Otherwise, I am doing it on both sides. So we're gonna thread this through and fold it in half, just like this, on both pieces. And then I have a ruler here because we're gonna wanna measure up from the bottom 2 inches and mark it with our pen here. Then I'm gonna take this bottom edge and line it with the D-ring going towards the center, up with this marking on the side here, and clip it in place. I do leave just a smidge overhang just to ensure that I get both layers, but keep in mind we are doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you just want to give yourself enough room that you don't hit your metal D-ring when you're sewing. So we'll go ahead and baste that in place and move on to the next step. Basted these in place, then we can set it aside. So for these next steps, again, it's real important to have it organized this way in front of you. So you have a right pocket and a left pocket, and zipper pulls are to the top. Right now we're gonna go ahead and just take all of the exterior pieces here and then one of each of the liners and set them aside. So now you are left with, this is the lining of the interior of the bag, and this is one lining of the pocket, and same thing over here, lining of the interior and one lining of the pocket. And we're gonna make our lining right now. Okay, so I have the two pocket liners wrong sides facing on both sides. I'm just gonna set the left side pocket aside, and we're gonna work on the right side. So I kind of just flip this way, and then as one, we're gonna pin them to the center notch on the curved edge on the long edge of the liner piece. We're gonna clip this in place. If you find it helpful to base these in place using an 1/8 inch seam allowance so that it doesn't shift, you're welcome to do that. I find it's unnecessary. So then I'm gonna line up the corners of each side, grabbing them as one. And then we'll clip the rest in place. And then you'll notice you should have a right side of the lining facing the right side of the main body lining. So this will be the interior of the side pocket. So now we're just gonna base this in place. So we want it close to the edge, but not too close where we don't catch all the layers. So I'm going about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, trying to be mindful of all the layers and hold them together, going around these curves. All right, so just verify that you got all the layers in your basting stitch, and then we'll put the other side on. So now we got the right side pocket attached. We're gonna repeat the same process with the left side. So we gotta flip it so that the yellow sides are facing right sides together, and line up that center mark once again, and then clip it in place, and we're gonna go ahead and baste it at the machine. All right, so the lining is now complete, but this is the lining of one of the pockets, which we will get to. So now we're gonna do the exterior pockets. Again, oriented a right, left, zipper pulls to the top so that you can stay organized. If your print is going up and down, that's why it's especially important. My print isn't, so it's not that big of a deal, but you'll run into that problem if you don't keep yourself organized. So I've already added a row of the double-sided tape, the 1/8 inch. We're gonna start with the right pocket again, so I'm gonna just move this stuff out of the way. I find it easiest to unzip my zipper and then lay this end up. We'll go towards the top for the closed zipper here, and then this will be on the bottom. So let's take off the adhesive. Again, keeping it oriented this way. My closed zipper would be up here, so it's just gonna open it. Center marking here, we're gonna flip it over so right sides are facing. Take that center marking and put it right there. So then I'm just gonna lay the edge of the zipper tape all the way around. Just like that. And just like that. Okay. So now that that's in place, we're gonna kind of clip this, get this out of the way, and then we're gonna take the liner and lay it face down on top and clip it in place. So we'll line up the center, the edges, clip it, and then we'll go ahead and sew our 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I am sewing with the exterior face up because that one is stuck in place with the double-sided tape, and then I'm going to ride the edge of my foot along the edge of the fabric. As I'm sewing, I'm trying to keep everything smooth and not bunched, but also I'm trying to feel for my zipper pull. So when I get to it, I'll have to reach inside and move it out of the way. And we're coming up on it. So I'll put my needle down, reach inside, move my zipper out of the way. So check the back that it looks good, you got all layers, and then we're just going to turn this right side out. And then we'll press this with our iron and do a good finger press with the waterproof canvas. And then because we have the adhesive in there, when we top stitch, we're going to get really close to the folded edge. It'll be an 1/8 inch away. And this area can be a little bulky, especially if you're using vinyl or anything heavy. So I like to hammer these seams before I top stitch it. All right, so now we're just going to top stitch. And I like to pull. I'm giving some good tension with my fingernails, pulling the zipper away, and then also pulls the lining away. So hopefully it's not bunching underneath. And then once I get down here, I'm just going to baste these edges together. All right, so our right side is done. Now we're going to repeat the same process for the left side. So right side is done, zipper pulls to the top. Now we're gonna work on the left side. So again, keeping it oriented this way so that you don't get confused. I'm gonna peel off the backing on this adhesive and we're gonna repeat the same process. Lay it face down, right side's facing together, lining up these center notches. This out of the way, and then right sides together. Clip. Clip the rest, and we're gonna go sew. Moving right along, we've got a right pocket and a left pocket. So now we're gonna grab the main exterior. If you're gonna add your bag label somewhere on here, you're gonna wanna do that now. I find that anywhere from 2 inches down to 4 inches on the top is a great place for a label, but if you're gonna do it from the bottom, in order to see it, you're gonna wanna go at least 6 inches, just the way that it's shaped, and when it's worn, you don't really see a label when it's really low. So I'm gonna measure 4 inches and place my label up here. I've just installed my label, and then I've added a row of the double-sided tape to each side. We're gonna again start with the right-hand side, so I'm gonna move the left pocket off and turn it so it's oriented with that right edge face towards the top. And then we're gonna take this and lay it face down on top. And I do find that it's easiest again to open my zippers, but this is the top of the bag. This is where the zipper was, so now I know that we're oriented correctly. Gonna find that center notch and lay it down just like we did when we added these side pockets. So now we're just gonna line it all the way up with this. So we've got it prepped like that. So we're gonna have to grab our liner that we completed in a previous step. So this is the wrong side face up. So this is the right side. We're gonna flip it so that we see the wrong side. And there's no right or wrong end for the lining. Unless you've added a pocket, you'll wanna be mindful of that. So as long as the wrong side is face up, we're gonna take this right hand edge, center notch, and lay it down so that this right side of the pocket is face down on the zipper. So take this and line these up right here. And because we've already basted all of this as one and we've taped down the main body, I'm just gonna clip this. Then when we go to the machine, we wanna make sure we're sewing with the exterior side face up so we can prevent any rippling, accidental rippling as we're sewing. All right, I'm gonna take it to the machine and we're gonna sew it with this side up, just like this. All right, again, I'm using the edge of my foot to sew this top part, and I'm sewing with the exterior face up so that I can make sure I'm doing a really good job that there's no pleats. I don't worry so much about the underside of the liner having pleats because again, it's on the inside of the bag, hard to see, but on the exterior you can see any and all pleats and it will make a big difference. So go slow, keeping a nice 1/4 inch seam allowance because again, this will affect how your main panel and zipper looks, and if your zipper will be wavy or uneven, this seam allowance is very important. All right, looking a little crazy right now, but if you just flip it around, it's gonna start to look like it's supposed to. So this is where you can take your time finger pressing and pulling it away from the zipper, or if you're using cotton or canvas, you can iron this away. But we're not actually gonna top stitch this one because one, it's not necessary, and two, by the time you get the second side on, it's really hard to top stitch. So if you've got a post bed machine or a cylinder arm or something that allows you to get in tight spaces, feel free, but I'm not going to right now. So I'm just gonna go ahead and continue to finger press this a little bit and iron it down using my iron. So I've just unzipped the pocket so that I can put it kind of on the corner here and pull my zipper away and get this ironed. Again, if you're using vinyl or anything else that can't be pressed with your iron, you're just gonna do a really good finger press. Be very careful near your coils. You don't want to melt them with your iron. I'm doing a quick press, but not holding my iron down on my zipper. Okay. All right. Now we're going to take the left zipper and peel off this adhesive. And then we're going to flip it right sides facing, lining up the center mark. So again, I find it easiest. Open the zipper, center mark to center mark. If you're not using double-sided tape, make sure if you're clipping to base that you're not clipping it to the lining yet. You don't want to do that. All right, so if you're, again, more comfortable basting this, go ahead and base that right now. But because I'm using the tape, I'm gonna leave that like so. And I need to pull this away so I can see the lining again. I'm gonna zip this back up so we can, all right, so this is what you're seeing. Now we're gonna flip it. So we're looking at the right sides of the lining and of the exterior here. So this is gonna get laid down flat, and this is gonna get laid down flat because we're lining up long edges to curves only. So you're not lining up a straight edge to the straight edge. We're lining up the curve to this curve. So now that we've laid this down and we've laid this down, this is where we're gonna form our burrito. I find my center mark over here and my center mark here, and we're gonna join them together just like this. I'm gonna clip it in place and continue to clip this entire edge so you're left with a burrito. All right, so it should look like a cocoon. It's scary right now, but this is right, okay? So we're gonna have exterior face up again so that we can stay real close to that edge and then make sure we're not having any pleats when we sew. So don't be afraid to kind of manhandle things right now, just to get where you need to go. Being very careful, keep the edge of my foot against the edge of the fabric and no pleats. This will help ensure that you have even zipper install and teeth and not wavy. All right, there you go, check, no pleats, and that we got all the sides, and now we gotta turn it right side out. So turning this right side out is daunting, I'm not gonna lie, because there's just that small hole. Because this is waterproof canvas, I brought out my blow dryer because this will help make this really super soft and buttery and turns very easily. And same thing if you've used vinyl. Keep this handy, it will be your best friend. So I'm gonna blast it with some heat and turn it right side out. Just turn it right side out. It's not exactly pretty at the moment because it's pretty wrinkled and I need to finger press this. But just like with the other side, I'm gonna go ahead and finger press this the best I can, pulling the zipper and the liner and pinching it like this, but then also take it to my iron so that I could iron this part. And sometimes I'll push it kind of inside out like this so I can lay it flat to iron as well. But if you're using vinyl, I find that blasting it with the hair dryer will make it really soft, but it also kind of helps get rid of those wrinkles as well. All right, so I gave it a nice press. It's looking pretty. Now we're gonna grab our topper and we're gonna take the handle side and lay it face down along the top edge, lining up these center markings and clip in place. Then we're just gonna base that to the edge. And then while we're basting that, we're gonna line up all of our edges and go baste all of the edges as well so that there's no loose layers and we close all of our pockets. Okay, so one of the final steps is now we have to attach the back and then the binding and add our hardware. So we are at the finish line, guys. So let's go ahead and tuck the exterior so it's now facing the interior. Get your webbing inside. And so you should have a center notch, and center notch, just as we have them on here. So the zipper needs to go from top to bottom. So I'm gonna open it and then flip it. So now they're right sides facing, and we're gonna center all of these notches. And then continue to clip all the way around. Got the back all clipped in place, so I'm gonna flip it so that the rounded side is side up so that we can go around this way. Just pick a side. We're doing the 1/2 inch seam allowance, so any areas that are kind of not quite to the edge, we at least have some wiggle room. Coming up to my D-ring, so I wanna be really careful not to actually hit it. Straighten it out the best you can with your fingers. Here's the other D-ring, so we want to be careful. Sewing over the topper here, where this is the grab handle. I know it's pretty obnoxious to turn your bag right side out before we do anything, but you really do want to make sure that you don't have any ripples and that you caught all the edges and everything before we start to trim down our seam allowance and even everything up and add our binding. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just going to turn it right side out, take a peek that it looks good, and then I got to put it back in. Peek. Okay, does everything look okay? Yep, so far so good. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back inside out and add our binding. Now I'm just gonna trim down everything so that's all even. Like this is kind of wonky, just so it makes putting the binding on pretty easy. When you do add the binding, that's the time you're going to want to use a thread color that matches as best as possible so you don't draw attention to it. When people are looking inside the bag, again, it's tucked up under the back main panel, but you don't want it to draw your eyes there with contrast stitching. But I'm going to continue with this rainbow stitching just for this tutorial purpose. Okay, now we're going to take our binding, and I'm just going to snip off the corners here so it reduces bulk there. Fold the edge under 1/4 inch, and we're just going to straddle the seam and clip it all the way around. All right, so we're gonna go ahead again, sew with the rounded part up, and then as I'm sewing it, I'm gonna push against the edge so that it doesn't fall off through the layers. And then I'm gonna sew as close to the edge, making sure that I catch both sides. All right. You just turned it right side out. So you'll notice sometimes your zipper is still a little wavy, and you do have to spend some time finger pressing it or ironing it. I find also kind of pinching the zipper like this helps even things out so that it's a pretty zipper. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and add our strap hardware. So make sure your strap doesn't flip, but we're going to thread on our strap adjuster, loop it over that center bar and back out the other side. So it's the right side, and then keeping that right side up as well, we're going to go ahead and put the swivel clasp face up, and then we're going to hold this end and come back through the opposite side of the strap adjuster. I kind of push it through and then gently tug this side to pull it down. And then I will flip it over once and clip that in place. And you can either add a couple of rivets here, or you can sew a row of stitching. So then you should make sure your strap is going the right way, and then you can clip it to whatever side you prefer. Okay, so if you look inside, you could see it's finished, and really it's up under this edge that the binding is. So it's not something you see first when you first look in the bag. So don't let this feel like you need to be perfect with your binding. It's not that big of a deal. All right, let's put her on. How cute is that? Throw it on. Is that adorable or what? If you read to the end of the pattern though, you know that there's a bonus. So let's make that right now. So we've included the bonus phone pocket that just slips right onto the shoulder strap. I already cut out the same topper vinyl so that it would match, but you're gonna see the backside. It's a single layer. So the other option I want to show you is that Mojo Sews sells this double-sided vinyl. It's much thicker, but it's pretty on both sides. This would make a wonderful phone pocket. But like I said, because I want it to match, I'm using this one for today. If you're using a really lightweight, stretchy vinyl, I would suggest you cut 2 of the pattern pieces and glue them wrong sides together so you have a pretty side on both sides. But for this demonstration purposes, I'm just gonna leave it as is. I cut out my pattern, I leave it clipped in place so that I can punch these holes and cut my line, and then I'm gonna mark this fold line. So just gonna do that right now. So I just line up my ruler and my X-Acto knife and cut. And then you don't necessarily have to do these holes at the end, but it does help with wear and tear, putting that strap in and out to prevent it from tearing beyond the holes. So I would recommend it, and especially if you've made a purse or pocket pal, you probably already have these tools on hand. So just go ahead and add them. And then there's a snap placement right here hole, as well as this one. Then this is the fold line, so I'm going to just mark it on my pattern right here and right here. So I can take this off. There we go. So if you glued two sides together, you're gonna wanna sew this top edge. If you didn't, you can leave that undone. Also, if you're gonna edge paint, you wanna paint this part right now, let it dry before we move on to the next step. So for this pattern, I did call for spring snaps. Again, if you've made any of my other patterns, I love the spring snaps because it's a lighter weight snap. It's not super strong where it's gonna rip through stuff, but it's strong enough. So we have to add the male portion of the snap to this notched out part. So I'm going to take the longer post and thread it through the back up to the front and then snap that on place, and then we're going to set it with a setter. If you're worried about your vinyl being flimsy, you may want to add a piece of Peltex or Decaville heavy or just fuse some woven interfacing there. But again, it's part of the pocket, so you will see it. So just keep that in mind. So we're just going to set this side. And then this is going to be the front of the pocket, and this is going to come down. So now to add the snap, this is the female portion. We're going to put the pretty side of the snap on the right side of the flap. And then we're going to put the whole portion right on top of that. But I have to swap out my dies to set this one. I've mentioned this before in the group and in other videos. This is a spring snaps set that I ordered off of Amazon. Mine's a hot mess right now, but it is organized by 4 different finishes. So it's got antique bronze, gold, silver, and gunmetal. Also has the setting tools needed and then little instructions. So this is a great beginner kit if you don't want to invest in dies and such. So another option to set these snaps if you want to go that route. All right, so I've already set the top portion. Now we're going to find that fold line, and we're going to go ahead and fold. I'm skipping the edge painting for today so that we can move along with the video, but if you want to see how I do it, I do go over it in much more detail in the Purse Pal video, which is a free video you're welcome to watch. So now that we've got it at the fold line, we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to start here. We're going to sew all the way across and down here. I tend to like to backstitch right here where the phone goes in and out for reinforcement, but then end it here. All right, so we're going to do an 1/8 inch seam allowance. If you feel like you're going to need to trim it up because it's shifted or you're worried about it, you could do more of a 1/4 inch, but I'm making sure to keep it nice and lined up. So when I get to this top, I just go forward and back and then keep going. And this part becomes important, sewing around this top flap, if you did glue two of your vinyls together. Otherwise, since this is just a single layer, I don't technically have to do this, but I do like the look of it. So I am sewing this top edge. And your phone pocket is done. All right, so now we're gonna unstrap this. I'm gonna flip this over and open it. And we're gonna just thread it inside. Through the pocket here and out this other hole that we cut. So then this does make the strap, oops, I did it, flip your strap around. So this makes the phone pocket removable at least. So you don't have to have it on if you want it, or you can take it off. So as you can see, I have it above the strap adjuster, or you can wear it lower on your hip if you prefer. But you just throw your phone in there, snap it shut, and voila.